Marcus Thompson had always been different from other soldiers. While his teammates joked around the barracks and shared stories of home, he sat quietly in the corner, cleaning his rifle with the same careful attention a surgeon might give to his instruments. The other men called him strange, antisocial, even weird. They laughed when he volunteered for solo reconnaissance missions that others avoided like the plague. The valley stretched before them like a green carpet dotted with small villages and winding roads. Intelligence reports suggested enemy forces had been moving through this area for weeks, but conventional patrols had found nothing. The terrain was perfect for ambushes, with thick forests on both sides and rocky outcrops that provided countless hiding spots. Most soldiers feared this place, but Marcus saw it differently. To him, it was a chessboard where patience and skill mattered more than numbers. Captain Rodriguez gathered the squad around a makeshift table in their temporary base camp. Maps covered every inch of the surface, marked with red circles and question marks. The captain's weathered face showed the strain of weeks without solid intelligence about enemy movements. "We've lost 3 patrols in that valley over the past month," Rodriguez announced, his voice heavy with frustration. "Command wants answers, and they want them fast. We need someone to get in there, observe, and report back with concrete information about enemy positions and strength." Sergeant Williams, a veteran with 20 years of experience, shook his head grimly. "Sir, that valley is a death trap. Anyone going in there alone is asking for trouble. We should send a full squad, maybe 2. "Can't do it," Rodriguez replied. "A large group would be spotted immediately. The terrain doesn't allow for multiple approach routes, and we can't risk losing more men to whatever's waiting in there." Marcus stepped forward from the back of the group. "I'll go, sir." The room fell silent. Then slowly the snickering began. Private Johnson was the first to speak up, barely containing his laughter. "Thompson thinks he's some kind of superhero. 1 man against whatever's hiding in that valley?" "Yeah, right," added Corporal Davis. "What are you going to do, talk them to death? You barely say 10 words a day to any of us." Even Sergeant Williams couldn't hide his skepticism. "Kid, this isn't a video game. Real combat is different from those perfect shots you make on the practice range. Out there, people shoot back." Marcus stood quietly, letting the laughter and comments wash over him. He had heard it all before. They saw his preference for solitude as weakness, his careful preparation as paranoia, his quiet confidence as arrogance. What they didn't understand was that Marcus had grown up in mountains similar to this valley. His father had been a hunter and guide, teaching him to move through forests like a ghost and to read terrain like others read books. Captain Rodriguez studied Marcus carefully. The young soldier had the highest marksmanship scores in the company and had never failed to complete an assigned mission, no matter how difficult. Still, this was different. This was potentially a suicide mission. "Thompson, I appreciate the volunteer spirit, but Sergeant Williams has a point. The valley has already claimed 3 patrols. What makes you think you can succeed where others have failed?" Marcus finally spoke, his voice calm and measured. "Sir, those patrols were following standard operating procedures. They moved in formation, used established routes, and operated during daylight hours. The enemy knows our tactics because we use the same ones everywhere. They're waiting for us to do exactly what we always do." He paused, gathering his thoughts before continuing. "I request permission to operate differently. Night movement, non-standard routes, extended observation periods. Give me 7 days to map their positions and patterns. I'll stay hidden, gather intelligence, and only engage if absolutely necessary for mission success or survival." The laughter had stopped. Rodriguez leaned back in his chair, considering the proposal. Marcus wasn't suggesting a heroic charge or a dramatic confrontation. He was talking about patience, observation, and intelligence gathering. These were skills that could actually work in this situation. "What about communication?" Williams asked, his tone more serious now. "If something goes wrong, how do we help you?" "Radio check every 12 hours at predetermined times," Marcus replied. "If I miss 2 consecutive checks, assume I'm compromised and proceed with alternative plans. But sir, I believe the mission has a better chance of success with minimal communication. Radio signals can be tracked and intercepted." Private Johnson shook his head in disbelief. "You're talking about disappearing into that valley for a week with no backup, no support, and almost no communication. That's not brave, Thompson. That's crazy." Marcus turned to face Johnson directly. "Every patrol that went into that valley announced their presence within hours of arrival. They followed roads, used clearings for rest stops, and maintained constant radio contact. The enemy had plenty of time to prepare ambushes. I'm suggesting we change the rules of the game. Captain Rodriguez stood up and walked to the window overlooking the valley. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. Somewhere in those shadows, enemy forces were planning their next move. Traditional tactics had failed repeatedly, costing lives and yielding no useful information. Thompson, your approach has merit, but the risks are enormous. If we lose you, we lose our best marksman and gain nothing. Sir, if we continue sending in standard patrols, we'll lose more men and still gain nothing. At least this way, we're trying something different. I've studied every report from the failed missions. They all made the same mistakes. I won't repeat them. The room remained quiet as Rodriguez considered the options. Outside, they could hear the distant sound of helicopters bringing in supplies and wounded soldiers from other operations. The war was taking its toll on everyone, and innovative solutions were becoming increasingly necessary. Sergeant Williams finally broke the silence. Sir, I still think it's too risky, but if Thompson is determined to try this, maybe we can provide some contingency support. Position observers at the valley entrance to watch for signals or signs of trouble. Marcus nodded appreciation for the suggestion. That could work, Sergeant, but they'd need to stay well back and remain undetected. Any obvious military presence near the valley will alert the enemy that someone is operating inside. Rodriguez made his decision. Thompson, you have 48 hours to prepare. Study every available map, weather report and intelligence summary. Plan your route, equipment needs, and communication schedule. After that, we'll make the final decision based on your preparation and current conditions. As the meeting broke up, the other soldiers continued their quiet conversations about the crazy plan and the strange soldier who had volunteered for what seemed like a suicide mission. Marcus simply returned to his bunk and began laying out his equipment for inspection and modification. He had work to do. The next 48 hours transformed Marcus from a quiet soldier into something resembling a ghost preparing for battle. While other soldiers spent their free time playing cards or writing letters home, Marcus worked with mechanical precision to modify his equipment and plan every detail of his mission. His rifle, already perfectly maintained, received additional attention. He wrapped the barrel in specialized tape to prevent glare and reduce heat signature. The scope was calibrated 3 times to ensure perfect accuracy at various distances. Most importantly, he removed every piece of unnecessary metal that might catch light or make noise. Even his dog tags were wrapped in tape and tucked securely under his shirt. Marcus studied the topographical maps until he could visualize every hill, stream, and path in the valley. He identified 17 possible observation points and planned routes between them that would keep him hidden from anyone watching the obvious approaches. The failed patrols had all used the main road or the wide game trails. Marcus planned to move through the thickest brush and steepest terrain, places where normal soldiers would never think to travel. Weather reports showed clear skies for the next 5 days, with temperatures dropping significantly at night. This was both good and bad news. Clear weather meant better visibility for observation, but also made it easier for enemies to spot movement. The cold nights would help hide his heat signature, but would make staying alert more difficult during long periods of motionless watching. Captain Rodriguez checked on Marcus's progress regularly, still uncertain about approving such a dangerous solo mission. On the morning of the second day, he found Marcus studying aerial photographs taken weeks earlier by reconnaissance drones. Find anything useful in those pictures? Rodriguez asked, settling into a chair beside the focused soldier. Marcus pointed to several locations marked with tiny pencil dots. These 3 positions offer perfect fields of fire covering all the main routes through the valley. If I were setting up an ambush, these are exactly where I'd place my shooters. The problem is that all our patrols approach from the south, which puts them in perfect view of these positions. So how do you plan to avoid the same fate? By approaching from the north, sir. The terrain is much more difficult, but it offers concealment almost all the way to the valley floor. More importantly, anyone watching for approaching forces would be focused on the southern approaches where we always come from. Rodriguez studied the proposed route on the map. It looked impossibly difficult, winding through rocky cliffs and dense forests that would take hours to navigate. Thompson, this route would take you at least 6 hours just to reach the valley. A normal patrol could be there in 90 minutes. Yes, sir, but those patrols never made it back. Speed isn't important if you don't survive to use the intelligence you gather. I'd rather take 6 hours to get in position than 30 minutes to get killed. The captain had to admit the logic was sound. Traditional military thinking emphasized speed and overwhelming force, but those tactics had failed repeatedly in this particular situation. Maybe a completely different approach was needed. What about supplies? 7 days is a long time to carry everything you need. Marcus gestured to his pack, which looked surprisingly small for such an extended mission. Water purification tablets instead of carried water. High-energy food bars instead of full meals. Minimal medical supplies focused on wound treatment and infection prevention. No sleeping bag, just a light blanket and waterproof covering. The goal is to stay mobile and hidden, not comfortable. That evening, Marcus conducted final equipment checks with the methodical care of someone who understood that forgotten details could mean death. Every item was examined, tested, and packed in exactly the right position for quick access. His ammunition was organized by type and distance, with each clip marked for easy identification in darkness. Sergeant Williams joined him during these final preparations, his skepticism gradually replaced by respect for the younger soldier's thoroughness. "You know, Thompson, I've been thinking about your plan. It's either brilliant or completely insane. I'm not sure which. Maybe both, Sergeant. But doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results is definitely insane. At least this way, we're trying something new. What makes you so confident you can succeed where others have failed? And don't give me technical answers about equipment and routes. What really makes you think you can pull this off?" Marcus paused in his packing and considered the question seriously. "Growing up, my father used to take me hunting in mountains just like these. Not for sport, but for survival. We'd spend weeks tracking deer and elk, learning to move without sound, to see without being seen. The difference between military training and survival hunting is patience. In the Army, we're taught to close with and destroy the enemy quickly. In hunting, you learn to wait for exactly the right moment." He held up a single bullet, examining it in the dim light. "My father taught me that every shot has to count because you might not get a second chance. He used to say that the best hunters were the ones who could wait for hours without moving, watching and learning before they acted. That's what this mission requires." Williams nodded slowly. The explanation made sense and revealed a side of Marcus that his fellow soldiers had never seen. This wasn't arrogance or foolishness. It was a specific set of skills developed over years of practice in exactly the kind of environment they were facing. "One more question, Thompson. What happens if you get into trouble out there? What's your plan for extraction or escape?" "Multiple escape routes planned for every observation position. If I'm discovered, I move immediately to the next position, using predetermined paths that avoid obvious lines of pursuit. If I'm injured, I have supplies for basic field treatment and a hidden cache location where helicopters could potentially reach me. But honestly, Sergeant, the best plan is not to get discovered in the first place." Captain Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, holding final mission orders and weather updates. "Thompson, conditions look good for tomorrow night's insertion. Minimal moon, clear skies, and wind patterns that will carry sound away from the valley. This might be our best window for the next 2 weeks." Marcus finished securing his pack and checked his watch. In 18 hours, he would be moving through darkness toward a valley that had already claimed the lives of 15 soldiers. The thought didn't frighten him, but it did focus his mind on the importance of every preparation detail. "Sir, I'm ready for final briefing and mission approval." The 3 men spent the next hour reviewing communication schedules, emergency procedures, and contingency plans. By the time they finished, even Sergeant Williams seemed convinced that this unconventional approach might actually work. As Marcus settled into his bunk for what might be his last comfortable sleep for a week, he could hear other soldiers in the barracks talking quietly about the mission. Some still thought he was crazy. Others had begun to respect his methodical preparation and unique skills. Tomorrow night would determine which group was right. Outside, the valley waited in darkness, holding its secrets and protecting whatever forces had made it so deadly for conventional military operations. Soon, Marcus would enter that darkness and begin a deadly game of patience and skill that would test everything his father had taught him about survival in hostile territory. The night air was crisp and still as Marcus made his final preparations at the insertion point. Captain Rodriguez and Sergeant Williams watched silently as he applied camouflage paint to his face and hands, transforming himself into something that would blend seamlessly with shadows and forest undergrowth. Every movement was deliberate and practiced, showing years of experience in fieldcraft. "Radio check at 600 and 1800 hours, Rodriguez reminded him quietly. "If you miss 2 consecutive checks, we assume compromise and initiate extraction procedures." Marcus nodded, adjusting his headset for the last time before switching to radio silence mode. Understood, sir. 7 days to map enemy positions and capabilities. No unnecessary risks, no heroic actions, just intelligence gathering. Thompson, Williams added. Remember that getting the information back to us is more important than getting perfect information. Don't push your luck trying to see everything. Copy that, Sergeant. I'll prioritize mission completion over comprehensive intelligence. At exactly 2300 hours, Marcus disappeared into the darkness like smoke dissolving into air. Rodriguez and Williams watched the forest edge where he had vanished, but within seconds there was no trace that anyone had ever been there. Even knowing where to look, they could detect no movement or sound. The northern approach to the valley was everything Marcus had expected and worse. Rocky outcrops and fallen trees created a maze that required constant navigation adjustments. Thick underbrush caught at his equipment and clothing, forcing him to move with extreme care to avoid making noise. What would have been a 30-minute walk on flat ground stretched into 3 hours of careful climbing and crawling. Marcus welcomed the difficulty. Every obstacle that slowed his progress would also deter casual patrols or pursuit. The enemy forces in the valley had grown comfortable with predictable approach routes and standard military tactics. They wouldn't expect anyone to attempt this northern route, especially not a single soldier moving alone. By Oro 400 hours, Marcus had reached his first planned observation position, a rocky outcrop overlooking the main valley floor from the northeast. The position offered excellent concealment and clear views of 3 suspected enemy locations, identified in the aerial photographs. More importantly, it was completely invisible from the southern approaches where previous patrols had been ambushed. Marcus settled into position with the patient stillness of a predator waiting for prey. His rifle was positioned for quick deployment, but his primary tools were high-powered binoculars and a spotting scope that would allow detailed observation without revealing his location. For the next 2 hours, he would remain motionless, watching and learning. Dawn brought the first intelligence breakthrough. At 0530, Marcus observed movement near the suspected enemy position on the valley's western ridge. Through his spotting scope, he counted 4 individuals moving between concealed positions that had been invisible from ground level. They were well-disciplined, using proper camouflage and movement techniques that explained why aerial reconnaissance had missed them. The enemy fighters were positioned to create a crossfire pattern covering the main road and both game trails used by previous patrols. Their weapons appeared to be sniper rifles and automatic weapons, perfectly suited for ambush operations. Most importantly, they were focusing their attention entirely on southern approaches, leaving the northern routes unobserved. Marcus carefully recorded his observations in a waterproof notebook, including precise position coordinates, estimated numbers, and equipment descriptions. Intelligence officers would need exact information to plan counter-operations or alternative route selections for future missions. At 0600, he made his first scheduled radio contact, keeping the transmission brief and coded to avoid detection. Base, this is Hunter. Position Alpha secured. Minimal weather. Continuing as planned. Rodriguez's voice crackled softly through his earpiece. Copy, Hunter. Conditions remain favorable. Continue mission. The brief exchange confirmed that Marcus was alive and operational, but revealed nothing about his location or discoveries to anyone monitoring radio traffic. Professional discipline required maintaining operational security, even when everything was going according to plan. Throughout the morning, Marcus observed regular enemy patrol patterns that revealed their operational structure. 2-man teams conducted hourly security sweeps along predetermined routes, while the main positions remained constantly manned. Their movements showed extensive knowledge of the terrain and careful coordination between positions. The enemy had clearly been operating in this valley for weeks or months, not days. They had established supply routes, communication systems, and defensive positions that would be extremely difficult to assault using conventional tactics. Any direct military action would result in heavy casualties and might not succeed in clearing the area. At midday, Marcus observed something that changed his understanding of the entire situation. A civilian vehicle, a small truck carrying supplies, approached the valley from the east using a road that didn't appear on any military maps. The truck was met by enemy personnel who unloaded food, ammunition, and medical supplies with the efficiency of a well-established routine. This discovery revealed that the enemy forces weren't just passing through the valley or hiding temporarily. They had established a permanent supply line and were operating with local support or cooperation. The implications were significant for military planning and suggested that the enemy presence was far more extensive than anyone had suspected. Marcus photographed the supply operation using a camera with a telephoto lens, capturing faces and vehicle details that would be valuable for intelligence analysis. The pictures showed at least 8 different individuals involved in the supply operation, indicating a larger force than the 4 he had initially observed. As afternoon approached, Marcus prepared to move to his second observation position. The movement would be risky because it required crossing open ground that might be visible from enemy positions. However, staying in one location too long also created risks if the enemy conducted counter-surveillance operations. The movement took 45 minutes of careful crawling and use of terrain features for concealment. Marcus's training and patience served him well as he moved only when certain that no one was observing his route. Several times he remained motionless, for 5 or 10 minutes when he detected movement or sound that might indicate enemy presence. The second position offered views of the valley's eastern approaches and the mysterious road used by the supply truck. From this vantage point, Marcus could see that the enemy had established at least 3 separate camps connected by concealed trails. The operation was far more sophisticated than anyone had imagined. As evening approached, Marcus prepared for his second radio contact while reflecting on the intelligence he had gathered. In less than 24 hours, he had discovered more about enemy capabilities and intentions than 3 previous patrols combined. The information would be crucial for planning future operations in the area. However, Marcus also realized that his mission was becoming more dangerous. The enemy force was larger, better organized, and more permanently established than expected. They had local support and sophisticated supply lines that would make them difficult to dislodge. Most concerning, they might have capabilities for detecting and tracking individual infiltrators that hadn't been encountered yet. At 1800 hours, Marcus made his evening radio contact. "Base, this is Hunter. Weather patterns more complex than anticipated. Continuing observation as planned." The coded message told Rodriguez that the situation was more complicated than expected, but that the mission was proceeding successfully. For now, Marcus remained undetected and was gathering valuable intelligence. But 6 more days remained, and each day would bring new challenges and risks. The second night in the valley brought unexpected challenges that tested every skill Marcus had learned during his years of hunting and military training. A sudden weather change filled the air with thick fog that reduced visibility to less than 50 meters. While the fog provided excellent concealment for movement, it also made navigation treacherous and eliminated his ability to conduct long-range observation. Marcus used the weather advantage to move closer to enemy positions than would have been possible under clear conditions. Moving through the fog required different techniques, relying more on hearing and terrain memory than vision. Every step had to be tested carefully to avoid loose rocks or dry branches that might create noise. By dawn of the second day, he had established himself in a position less than 200 meters from the main enemy camp. The proximity was dangerous but offered opportunities for detailed intelligence gathering that would have been impossible from his previous observation points. Through gaps in the fog, he could observe individual conversations and activities that revealed important details about enemy organization and intentions. The enemy force was more professional than typical irregular fighters. They maintained strict schedules for guard duty, conducted regular equipment maintenance, and followed communication protocols that suggested formal military training. Their weapons were well maintained and modern, not the aging equipment usually associated with guerrilla operations. Most concerning was their obvious familiarity with the terrain and local population. Marcus observed several meetings between enemy personnel and civilians, who appeared to be providing information about military movements in the surrounding area. The enemy had established an intelligence network that explained their success in avoiding detection and planning effective ambushes. During the morning hours, Marcus documented a weapons cache hidden in a natural cave formation. The cache contained anti-tank missiles, explosives, and communications equipment that indicated capabilities far beyond what previous intelligence had suggested. This was not a small harassment force, but a well-equipped unit capable of sustained operations against military targets. The discovery changed the nature of Marcus's mission. What had begun as a reconnaissance operation to locate a small enemy force had become an intelligence-gathering mission against a significant military threat. The information he was collecting would be crucial for planning major military operations, not just patrol route adjustments. At his scheduled radio contact, Marcus adjusted his coded message to reflect the increased importance of his discoveries. Base, this is Hunter. Weather systems showing major storm potential. Require extended observation period for accurate assessment. Captain Rodriguez understood the message immediately. Marcus had discovered something significant enough to justify extending the mission beyond the planned 7 days. However, extended operations also meant increased risk of detection and compromise. Copy, Hunter. Continue weather monitoring. Support remains available if conditions deteriorate rapidly. The third day brought Marcus's closest call yet. While moving between observation positions, he nearly walked into an enemy patrol conducting an unexpected sweep of the northern valley areas. Only years of hunting experience saved him from detection, allowing him to freeze in position and blend with the forest. Undergrowth until the patrol passed. The patrol's presence in the northern areas indicated that the enemy was aware of potential infiltration routes and was taking countermeasures. They might not know that Marcus was in the valley, but they were clearly concerned about the possibility of surveillance or infiltration from unexpected directions. After the patrol passed, Marcus realized that his safe movement routes were compromised. The enemy was adapting their security measures, probably in response to the failure of recent ambush attempts against patrols that had stopped coming. They were becoming more cautious and expanding their security perimeter. Marcus spent the remainder of the day observing from a concealed position while planning new movement routes that would account for increased enemy security measures. The mission was becoming more complex, but the intelligence value was also increasing with each discovery. During afternoon observations, Marcus witnessed something that changed his understanding of the entire operational picture. A helicopter landed in a clearing near the main enemy camp, delivering personnel and supplies that suggested coordination with forces outside the immediate valley area. The helicopter bore no identifying markings, but its type and equipment indicated professional military support. The arriving personnel included someone who appeared to be a senior officer based on the respectful treatment received from the existing force. This individual conducted detailed briefings with position leaders and examined maps that showed military installations throughout the region. The enemy operation was clearly part of a larger strategic plan involving multiple locations and objectives. Marcus photographed the helicopter and new arrivals, capturing images that would be valuable for identifying the aircraft type and potentially tracing its origin. The photographs also documented the existence of air support capabilities that posed additional threats to friendly forces in the area. As evening approached, Marcus faced a critical decision. His original mission parameters called for 7 days of observation, followed by extraction. However, the intelligence he was gathering was far more significant than anticipated, and the enemy operation was larger and more sophisticated than anyone had suspected. The presence of air support and senior leadership indicated that major operations might be planned using this valley as a staging area. Continuing observation might reveal timing and objectives for those operations, but it would also mean extended exposure to discovery and capture. Marcus made his evening radio contact with careful consideration of how to communicate the situation's complexity. Base, this is Hunter. Major storm system developing. Recommend weather station remain operational for extended monitoring. Critical data collection opportunities identified. Rodriguez's response was immediate and showed understanding of the situation's importance. Copy, Hunter. Weather station approved for extended operations. Additional support being prepared for emergency conditions. The coded exchange authorized Marcus to continue the mission beyond original parameters while confirming that extraction forces were being prepared in case emergency evacuation became necessary. The decision reflected the high value of intelligence being gathered and the military's recognition that the situation was more significant than originally believed. That night, Marcus established a new concealed position that offered observation of the helicopter landing area and main camp, while providing multiple escape routes if discovery became imminent. The position required him to remain motionless for extended periods, but it offered opportunities to observe senior leadership activities that might reveal operational plans. The fourth day began with intense activity in the enemy camp. Additional personnel arrived by vehicle, and equipment was being redistributed among the various positions throughout the valley. Something significant was being planned, and Marcus was in position to observe the preparations. Through his spotting scope, Marcus observed detailed map discussions and equipment distributions that suggested a major operation was planned within the next few days. The timing and scale of the operation would be crucial intelligence for friendly forces, but gathering that information meant remaining in position despite increasing risks. Marcus realized that his mission had evolved from simple reconnaissance to deep intelligence, gathering with strategic implications. The information he was collecting could affect military operations throughout the entire region. However, each additional day in the valley increased the probability of detection and capture. The enemy force was professional, well-equipped, and operating with sophisticated support systems. They were also becoming increasingly security conscious as they prepared for whatever operation they had planned. Marcus would need all his skills and experience to remain undetected while gathering the critical intelligence that his commanders needed. The fifth day brought revelations that transformed Marcus's reconnaissance mission into something of critical strategic importance. Dawn observations revealed a massive buildup of personnel and equipment that dwarfed anything he had previously documented. Vehicles arrived throughout the morning carrying additional fighters, weapons, and supplies that indicated preparation for a major offensive operation. From his concealed position overlooking the main staging area, Marcus counted over 60 combatants where he had initially observed only 4. The force included specialists with different types of equipment, suggesting a complex operation requiring diverse skills. Communication specialists set up sophisticated radio equipment, while weapons experts assembled heavy machine guns and mortar systems. The most alarming discovery came when Marcus observed detailed planning sessions involving large-scale maps of the surrounding region. Through his high-powered spotting scope, he could identify several friendly military installations marked on the enemy maps with what appeared to be attack timing and approach route notations. Marcus carefully documented everything he observed, understanding that this intelligence could prevent major casualties among friendly forces. However, gathering detailed information required remaining in position for extended periods while enemy activity increased around his concealment. The risk of discovery was growing with each passing hour. During midday observations, Marcus witnessed the arrival of technical specialists who began assembling equipment he recognized as communications jamming devices. The implications were staggering. The enemy was preparing to disrupt military communications across the entire region. Before launching their offensive operations, the communications jamming equipment explained how the enemy had been so successful in ambushing patrols. They could monitor friendly radio traffic and jam emergency calls for support during attacks. This capability made them far more dangerous than conventional insurgent forces and required immediate tactical adjustments by friendly commanders. Marcus photographed the jamming equipment and personnel setting it up, capturing technical details that would be crucial for developing countermeasures. The photographs also documented the professional level of the enemy operation and the sophistication of their planning and preparation. As afternoon approached, Marcus observed arrival of what appeared to be explosive ordnance specialists, carrying equipment consistent with large-scale demolition operations. The specialists immediately began coordinating with the planning team, suggesting that destruction of infrastructure was a key component of the planned offensive. The scope of the enemy operation was becoming clear. This was not harassment or guerrilla activity, but a coordinated assault designed to disrupt friendly military operations throughout the entire regional area. The attack would likely target multiple installations simultaneously while jamming communications to prevent coordinated response. Marcus faced an increasingly difficult decision about when to extract with the critical intelligence he had gathered. Each additional hour of observation revealed more details about enemy capabilities and intentions, but also increased the probability of detection as activity levels rose. Throughout the valley, the decision was made for him when an enemy patrol passed within 50 meters of his position during an expanded security sweep. Marcus remained motionless as the patrol leader stopped directly in front of his concealment and spent several minutes examining the area with obvious suspicion. Through sheer luck and superior camouflage, the patrol moved on without detecting Marcus's presence. However, the close call revealed that enemy security measures were becoming increasingly thorough as they prepared for their operation. Remaining in position much longer would almost certainly result in discovery. At his evening radio contact, Marcus transmitted an emergency-coded message indicating the critical nature of his discoveries. Base, this is Hunter. Major weather emergency developing. Immediate evacuation of weather-sensitive areas recommended. Storm impact in 48 hours maximum. The message warned that a major enemy operation was planned within 2 days, and that immediate action was needed to protect friendly installations. Rodriguez's response was immediate and showed understanding of the urgency. Copy, Hunter. Emergency weather warnings being issued immediately. Extraction preparation beginning now. Maintain current position until weather conditions permit safe movement. The response indicated that Marcus's intelligence was being acted upon immediately while extraction forces were being prepared for emergency evacuation. However, Marcus would need to remain in position overnight to ensure he could provide final intelligence updates about enemy timing and objectives. That night, Marcus observed final preparations that confirmed his assessment of the operation's timing and scale. Vehicle convoys departed the valley, carrying assault teams toward various objectives while the main force prepared for coordinated attacks beginning at dawn in 2 days. The enemy had planned their operation with professional precision, timing multiple simultaneous attacks to maximize confusion and prevent effective response. Communications jamming would begin 30 minutes before the first attacks, ensuring that friendly forces could not coordinate defensive measures or call for reinforcement. Marcus documented final intelligence about attack timing, objectives, and coordination methods that would be crucial for organizing effective countermeasures. However, he also realized that his extended presence in the valley had been detected by increasingly sophisticated enemy security measures. During the early morning hours of the 6th day, Marcus observed clear signs that the enemy was conducting focused searches for surveillance personnel. Additional patrols were sweeping areas that provided observation capabilities while technical specialists used detection equipment to search for radio signals and electronic devices. The enemy clearly suspected that their preparations were being observed. Even if they hadn't located Marcus specifically, their countermeasures were becoming more aggressive and systematic, suggesting that discovery was becoming inevitable if he remained in position much longer. Marcus made the decision to begin extraction procedures while maintaining observation capabilities as long as possible. The intelligence he had gathered was already sufficient to prevent the enemy operation from achieving surprise, but additional details about timing and coordination would improve friendly response effectiveness. During morning observations, Marcus confirmed final details about the enemy operation, while preparing for immediate departure if detection became imminent. The enemy force was conducting final equipment checks and briefings that indicated the operation would begin exactly 48 hours from his current position. At his scheduled radio contact, Marcus transmitted final intelligence while requesting immediate extraction. Base, this is Hunter. Storm conditions confirmed for 36 hours from now. Weather station compromised and requires immediate evacuation. Critical data package ready for transmission. Rodriguez's response confirmed that extraction was being arranged, while friendly forces prepared to counter the enemy operation. Copy, Hunter. Emergency extraction authorized. Move to designated pickup zone. Storm warnings in effect throughout region. Marcus began moving toward the extraction point while enemy security measures intensified throughout the valley. His mission had succeeded beyond all expectations, gathering intelligence that would prevent major casualties and operational disruption. However, getting safely out of the valley with that intelligence remained a dangerous challenge that would test all his skills one final time. The enemy was now actively searching for him with professional determination and sophisticated equipment. The next few hours would determine whether Marcus could successfully extract with the critical intelligence that could save hundreds of lives and prevent a major military disaster. Marcus's extraction route to the designated pickup zone became a deadly game of cat and mouse, as enemy forces systematically searched the valley for the infiltrator they now knew was present. Electronic detection equipment swept methodically through areas that provided observation capabilities while patrol teams examined every possible concealment position with professional thoroughness. The original extraction plan called for Marcus to reach a clearing 3 kilometers north of his observation position where helicopters could safely land for pickup. However, enemy security measures had transformed the valley into a carefully monitored area where any movement risked immediate detection and engagement. Marcus moved through the forest with extreme caution, using every technique his father had taught him about avoiding detection in hostile territory. He moved only when wind patterns would mask any sound, paused frequently to listen for pursuit, and avoided any route that might leave tracks or other signs of passage. Progress toward the extraction zone was agonizingly slow as Marcus was forced to take lengthy detours around enemy positions and detection equipment. What should have been a 2-hour movement stretched into 6 hours of careful navigation through increasingly dangerous terrain. The enemy had established checkpoint positions along all the obvious routes leading out of the valley, forcing Marcus to use steep cliff areas and dense undergrowth that would normally be considered impassable. The difficult terrain provided concealment, but also created opportunities for injury that could compromise his ability to reach the extraction zone. By midday, Marcus had covered less than half the distance to the pickup zone, while enemy search operations intensified around his previous observation positions. Radio intercepts indicated that the enemy had found evidence of his presence and was conducting coordinated sweeps to locate and eliminate the surveillance threat. Marcus realized that reaching the designated extraction zone would be impossible without engaging enemy forces that blocked all direct approaches. He made the difficult decision to alter the extraction plan and move toward an alternative pickup area that would require coordination with his support team. Using his emergency radio frequency, Marcus transmitted a brief coded message indicating the need for alternative extraction procedures. Base, this is Hunter. Primary shelter compromised, moving to alternate location. Weather conditions deteriorating rapidly. Rodriguez's response came within minutes, showing that extraction forces were monitoring the situation closely. Copy, Hunter. Alternate shelter locations being prepared. Maintain current movement. Weather support inbound. The message confirmed that alternative extraction sites were being prepared while air support was being positioned to assist if Marcus encountered serious resistance during his escape attempt. However, calling for air support would also reveal the existence of friendly surveillance operations to the enemy. As afternoon progressed, Marcus's movement became increasingly dangerous as enemy patrols expanded their search pattern to cover areas they had initially considered impassable. Professional trackers were following his route using techniques that indicated extensive experience in hunting human targets through difficult terrain. Marcus was forced to use survival techniques learned during his hunting expeditions with his father, including methods for moving through water to avoid leaving tracks and using natural camouflage to become virtually invisible when enemy forces passed nearby. These skills had been developed over years of practice but never tested in such life-threatening circumstances. The most dangerous moment came when Marcus found himself trapped between 2 converging patrol teams in an area that offered minimal concealment. He was forced to remain motionless for over an hour, while enemy personnel searched the immediate area with detection equipment and tracking dogs. The presence of tracking dogs changed the entire nature of the escape operation. Marcus's scent trail would lead directly to his current position unless he could find ways to confuse or eliminate the scent signature. Water crossings became essential, but they also created opportunities for enemy forces to establish ambush positions at likely crossing points. Marcus used techniques learned from his father's stories about evading pursuit during hunting expeditions, including the use of strong-scented plants to mask human odor and moving through areas where multiple animal trails would confuse tracking efforts. The methods were primitive but effective against even professional tracking teams. As evening approached, Marcus finally reached visual contact with the alternative extraction zone, a small clearing surrounded by hills that would provide natural protection during helicopter operations. However, enemy forces had also identified this area as a likely extraction point and were positioning personnel to intercept any rescue attempt. The extraction zone was under observation by enemy forces positioned on surrounding hills. making any helicopter approach extremely dangerous. Marcus would need to eliminate or neutralize the enemy observation posts before extraction could proceed safely, transforming his intelligence-gathering mission into a combat operation. For the first time during his mission, Marcus prepared to engage enemy forces directly. His rifle, which had remained unused throughout 6 days of observation, was finally positioned for combat operations. The change from observer to combatant required adjustments in tactics and mindset that tested his training and experience. Marcus identified 3 enemy positions that posed the greatest threat to extraction operations. The positions were well concealed and professionally established, showing that the enemy had anticipated the possibility of rescue operations and prepared accordingly. Eliminating these positions would require precise shooting and careful timing to prevent alerting other enemy forces in the area. The first target was an observation post positioned to monitor the helicopter approach route from the south. Marcus calculated distance, wind effects, and timing required to eliminate this position without alerting nearby enemy forces. The shot would need to be perfect because a second opportunity would not be available. Using techniques perfected during years of hunting with his father, Marcus controlled his breathing and heartbeat while preparing for the most important shot of his military career. Everything he had learned about marksmanship, patience, and precision would be tested in this moment that would determine whether he survived to deliver the critical intelligence he had gathered. At exactly 1800 hours, Marcus made his scheduled radio contact while preparing for combat operations. Base, this is Hunter. Weather conditions critical. Shelter preparation required immediately. Lightning strikes necessary for safe evacuation. Rodriguez understood that Marcus was preparing to engage enemy forces to clear the extraction zone. Copy, Hunter. Weather support standing by. Lightning strikes authorized when ready. Emergency evacuation commencing. The coded exchange authorized Marcus to engage enemy positions while confirming that extraction helicopters were preparing for immediate departure. Within minutes, Marcus would transform from hidden observer to active combatant in operations that would either secure his escape or result in his capture or death. Everything depended on the skills his father had taught him during years of hunting in mountains similar to this valley. The patient observation, precise shooting, and survival techniques learned during those expeditions would now determine whether Marcus could successfully complete his mission and return with intelligence that could save hundreds of lives. The first shot echoed across the valley like thunder, shattering the tense silence that had dominated Marcus's 6-day mission. The enemy observer on the southern hill collapsed instantly, eliminated with the precision that years of hunting had perfected. But the sound also announced Marcus's position to every enemy force in the valley, transforming his mission from stealth observation to direct combat. Marcus immediately shifted position, using terrain features to move toward the second target, while enemy forces throughout the valley responded to the sound of gunfire. Radio chatter increased dramatically as commanders attempted to coordinate response to the sniper attack, but their voices carried confusion and uncertainty about the exact location and number of attackers. The second shot came 3 minutes later from a completely different position, taking down an enemy fighter who was scanning the area where Marcus's first shot had originated. The tactical precision confused enemy commanders who couldn't determine whether they were facing one sniper or multiple attackers operating from coordinated positions. Marcus had learned from his father that successful hunting required not just accuracy, but the ability to move quickly between positions and strike from unexpected angles. The same principles applied to combat operations, especially when outnumbered and operating alone against professional opposition. The third enemy position proved more challenging because the occupants had taken cover after hearing the previous shots. Marcus was forced to wait patiently for over 20 minutes before one of the enemy fighters exposed himself enough for a clear shot. The patience required tested every lesson about remaining calm under pressure that his father had taught him. When the opportunity finally presented itself, Marcus's shot was perfect. The third position was neutralized, clearing the extraction zone of immediate threats and opening a safe corridor for helicopter operations. However, enemy forces were now converging on the area in response to the sniper attacks, creating a narrow window for extraction before overwhelming opposition arrived. Marcus transmitted his final coded message to initiate extraction procedures. Base, this is Hunter. Lightning strikes completed successfully. Weather shelter cleared for immediate evacuation. Storm conditions critical. Rodriguez's response was immediate and showed that extraction forces had been standing by in full readiness. Copy, Hunter. Emergency evacuation inbound. Weather support arriving in 3 minutes. Clear the shelter area. The sound of approaching helicopters could be heard in the distance, but so could the movement of enemy forces converging on the extraction zone from multiple directions. The next few minutes would determine whether Marcus could successfully complete his mission or would be captured or killed just moments before rescue arrived. Marcus positioned himself to provide covering, fire for the extraction helicopters while maintaining concealment from approaching enemy forces. His ammunition was limited, requiring careful shot selection and precise targeting to maximize effectiveness while conserving resources for the most critical moments. The extraction helicopters appeared over the ridge at exactly the calculated time, approaching the clearing with professional precision, while Dr. Gunners prepared to provide suppressive fire if enemy contact occurred. The pilot's skill was evident in the way he maneuvered through the confined space while maintaining readiness for immediate departure. Enemy forces reached visual contact with the extraction zone just as the first helicopter touched down. Marcus engaged the closest threats with carefully aimed shots that forced them to take cover, while the helicopter prepared for pickup. Each shot was calculated to maximize tactical effect while conserving ammunition for continuing engagement. Marcus sprinted toward the helicopter under covering fire from the door gunners, crossing open ground that made him vulnerable to enemy fire from multiple directions. Years of physical conditioning and training enabled him to reach the aircraft, despite carrying full equipment and operating under extreme stress. As the helicopter lifted off, Marcus could see enemy forces emerging from concealment throughout the valley, revealing the true extent of the opposition he had been avoiding for 6 days. Professional soldiers with modern equipment and coordinated tactics had been searching for him with systematic determination that would have defeated most infiltration attempts. The flight back to base provided Marcus with his first opportunity to decompress from 6 days of constant tension and immediate life-threatening danger. However, his mind remained focused on the critical intelligence he was carrying and the urgent need to brief commanders about the enemy operation planned for the following day. Captain Rodriguez was waiting at the landing zone along with intelligence officers who had been prepared to receive Marcus's immediate debrief. The importance of his mission was evident in the senior personnel assembled to hear his report and the immediate preparations being made to act on his intelligence. Marcus's debrief revealed the full scope of the enemy operation and provided detailed information about timing, objectives, and capabilities that enabled commanders to prepare effective countermeasures. The planned enemy offensive was disrupted before it could begin, preventing casualties and operational disruption throughout the regional area. Within hours of Marcus's extraction, friendly forces were conducting preemptive strikes against enemy positions throughout the valley. Using the precise coordinates and tactical information he had provided, the enemy's carefully planned operation was destroyed. Before it could achieve any of its objectives, the enemy forces that had seemed so formidable during Marcus's observation were neutralized through coordinated airstrikes and ground operations that exploited their specific locations and defensive arrangements. Intelligence gathered during 6 days of patient observation enabled tactical responses that were precisely targeted and overwhelmingly effective. Intelligence analysis of Marcus's photographs and reports revealed connections to enemy operations throughout the region, leading to additional successful operations that disrupted an entire network of planned attacks. His single-handed intelligence gathering had strategic implications far beyond the immediate valley operation. Weeks later, after the full impact of his mission had been assessed, Marcus received recognition for preventing what could have been a major military disaster. However, the recognition meant less to him than the knowledge that his father's lessons about patience, observation, and precision had been validated in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. The other soldiers who had initially laughed at Marcus's unconventional approach and solitary methods now viewed him with respect and professional admiration. His success had demonstrated that sometimes the most effective military operations required skills and techniques that couldn't be learned in conventional training programs. Marcus returned to his quiet routine of equipment, maintenance, and careful preparation, But his fellow soldiers no longer considered him strange or antisocial. They understood that his methodical approach and preference for working alone reflected capabilities that had been tested under extreme conditions and proven effective against professional opposition. The valley that had claimed the lives of 15 soldiers in 3 failed patrol operations was now secure, its enemy positions eliminated through intelligence gathered by one man operating alone for 6 days. The success proved that sometimes unconventional approaches and individual skills could achieve objectives that traditional military tactics could not accomplish. Marcus's mission had transformed him from an overlooked soldier into a respected specialist whose unique capabilities would be called upon for similar operations in the future. But more importantly, it had validated everything his father had taught him about the importance of patience, observation, and precision in achieving success against overwhelming odds. The lone sniper who had been laughed at for volunteering for a mission others considered impossible had silenced his critics with achievements that exceeded all expectations. The echoes of his shots across the valley had announced not just tactical success, but the emergence of capabilities that would be remembered and respected throughout his military career.